You do not want to miss this episode. Christine and I are breaking down the 2025 Canadian budget, the 8 things that every Canadian must know about the budget and how it affects you. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound. I'm Darren Mitchell, and joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, how you doing today?
Hey, Darren, I'm doing great. Excited. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm looking forward to digging into the budget, I guess.
Yeah, we spent a bunch of time going through this, and well, I'll give you the spoiler alert. Once you pull back the curtain, nothing's really drastically changing. So we're gonna dig into it. We're gonna share some positives, and we're gonna share some concerns, but hopefully a fairly balanced approach on what we think of the budget. But we tried to really nail down the 6, 7, 8 factors that we think Canadians should know and how it's going to affect you. Because you see these documents and they're like a million pages long, and it's like going through. So we're just trying in this podcast to say, okay, these are the key factors that you should really know, as every Canadian should know on what's going on in our country. So that's kind of the goal today.
Yeah, and before we dig into it, if you enjoy listening to our podcasts, we'd really appreciate it if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform to please subscribe and leave that 5-star review for us. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you always know when new content is coming out. And don't forget to follow us on social media at Control a Compound on Instagram and TikTok. We've always got lots of new content coming out that you don't want to miss.
All right, so let's dig into it. Let's start with I think of this as a smoke and mirrors budget. You go to see a magician, and they have this. The lights are flashing, the music's booming, everyone's excited, and there's a burst of fireworks. The magician comes out and he goes, "We're going to have historic investments, once in a generation opportunities, transformational change." And you're all excited, and you're kind of buying into this, and the performance is great, and you're like, and then you kind of realize it's not really magic, it's just sleight of hand. Money's being shuffled from one account to another. The whole transformational change is really a lot of the same old, just rebranded under a different name. So we're going to dig into this couple areas of positive, but at the end of the day, the deficits are still there. The debt keeps climbing. Promises are made, just like politicians always make promises. But I think the big takeaway for me is the budget doesn't repair the damage that has been done. It just it makes the illusion like they're going like they're fixing it, but it's really just making it actually worse in a lot of cases. And when things get worse, guess who foots the bill? It's us taxpayers. So I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, but we're gonna dig into kind of the numbers and some of the key areas. So that's kind of my quick overview.
Yeah, the numbers are definitely staggering. I think we should hit on those deficits on steroids.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're exactly right. It's literally deficits on steroids. Like this year's deficit. So again, keep in mind, this isn't debt, this is deficit. So this is how much more we spent than we brought in. Okay, equate it to your personal finances. How much more did you spend this month or this year than you brought in? This year's deficit for the Canadian government was $78.3 billion. Think of that. We spent 78 billion more than we brought in, and that's double what Trudeau had forecasted. Double. Our spending for this year, so everything the government's going to spend, is 585.8 billion. So with 586 billion, that's 38 billion more than last year. So we're not really the austerity budget of, fiscal responsibility. We're spending 38 billion more. We spent more than ever, and now we're spending another 38 billion more than last year. So as opposed to austerity, I would say it'd be more like a fiscal buffet. Let's keep playing these accounting games and saying we're being fiscally responsible, but the reality is you're spending more money. The debt is by 2029 expected to be 2.9 trillion. Okay. And that's even 266 billion higher than the previous Trudeau government projected. So I do think it's a generational budget just because your grandkids are going to be paying for this. Like generations it'll take generations to pay for this. So I was trying to think of an analogy to equate, this government spending, because you hear these numbers and you're like, yeah, debt, deficit, like, but picture you're a homeowner and your groceries, your gas, your restaurant, Netflix, all the money you're spending, you hit this massive credit card debt, and your spouse comes to you and says, we can't just keep this. Like we're spending way more money than we're bringing in. We're going into debt each month, and you go, no, honey, it's okay. Um, the, I'm using it for operating spending. The shiny new deck in the backyard, and the big new entertainment system. I financed that with a line of credit, but it's not spending, it's investing in our future. Now, the bank doesn't give a crap if you're putting a deck in or putting a garage on to invest in your future. They're looking at your total spending and go, no, you got a problem here. You keep borrowing more money. You're spending more than you're bringing in. So that's how I kind of equate it to the government. Imagine just trying to convince your spouse all this extra spending you're doing and going into debt each month. No, it's an investment in our future. So, there's a real challenge there that I think, again, there's got to be a day of reckoning. You can't keep having these deficits and debts. Someone's going to have to eventually pay, and it's going to be the Canadian taxpayers, and for generations.
Well, yeah, with debt comes interest, which is what I wanna talk about a bit because it's really a jaw dropper when you look at the interest payments we're gonna have to make. Debt interest payments this year, $56 billion. And by 2029, that's gonna jump to over 67 billion. That is a lot in interest. Like let that digest. 76 billion going to interest costs on debt every single year. So, to put that into perspective, every dollar you pay in GST right now might as well be tossed straight into a fire because that's exactly how much is going to just cover interest payments going forward. And here's the part that Ottawa doesn't want us talking about. By 2029, 13 cents on every tax dollar collected will be spent just to service old debt. That's it. 13 cents on every tax dollar. That's crazy. It's not going to building infrastructure. It's not cutting our taxes. It's not going to the healthcare that we definitely need. It's not helping the small business grow. It is literally just paying interest. At this point, it's like the government is rolling pallets of cash up to Parliament Hill every week and lighting them on fire. Like, it's crazy in my mind. Billions of dollars that could have improved our safety, upgraded our transit, lowered taxes, helped entrepreneurs. It's going up in smoke. Like in just interest, just straight interest. Think about that on the lines of like, oh my gosh, it hurts me. The thing.
You imagine what would happen to the economy if we just eliminated the GST, how beneficial that would be to everyone, but no, we can't do that because that money, just that is, or that only pays for the interest, none of the debt, none of the other stuff. The other thing that really drives me crazy, I know politicians spin, and I know they all do it, but I think it's a little more than a spin when we have the prime minister, we have the finance minister saying Canada has the lowest net to GDP in the G7. You hear this line and you're like, "Oh, well, I guess we're doing better than everyone." So again, I want to use a story here. So picture you're a business owner. So let's take someone, let's call her Lisa. So Lisa runs a construction company and she's meeting with the accountant, and the accountant says, listen, I looked over your books. You got a massive amount of debt this year, $3 million in equipment loans. You got this mortgage line of credit. Like, are you comfortable with that massive debt? And Lisa looks at her accountant and goes, no. Don't you worry, accountant. I'm not worried at all. My net debt is one of the lowest in the industry. And the accountant looks at her and goes, what do you mean your net debt? So she pulls out this spreadsheet and she goes, look, if I include all my employees' RRSP and pension dollars on my balance sheet, then my net debt is one of the lowest in the industry. And the accountant looks at her and goes, what, you can't include your employees' pensions. That's the employees' money. You can't include your employees' RSPs. That's their money." And she goes, "No, no, 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 no. That's my net debt." So that is exactly what the Canadian government is doing when they say our our net to debt, sorry, our net to debt GDP is the lowest in the G7, because what they're doing is they're including Canada Pension and the Quebec Pension as assets of the government. They are not assets of the government. They are our money. They like we've contributed, they've contributed, or the employers have contributed, and we have contributed, not the government. Us and the employers have contributed to the CPP. That money is going to the people that contributed to CPP. That money is not part of the government finances, but yet they include that to come up with this BS number of net to GDP. So when the government says we have this fiscal room, it's just it's a lie. Canada's isn't first in the G7. When we look at the real debt, when we strip that away, we're the third worst in the G7. And over the last decade, our debt has grown faster than any other G7 country. Okay. So the real story is our debt is growing faster than any other G7. The spin they say is, oh, we're in good fiscal shape because we have the lowest net to GDP ratio. Well, that's just smoke and mirrors.
Well, yeah, and you can understand why Canadians are concerned about the CPP going. Is it going to be there when they go to retire? When they're throwing these types of things into their numbers, right? It's concerning.
Yeah, and I think like another key thing to look at here, it just sucks up so many of the dollars out there. So when governments borrow like this, they soak up available capital. So that's going to mean higher interest rates for everyone. So you want higher interest rate for businesses, for mortgages, home buyers, entrepreneurs, builders, and the other thing they're doing to sort of crowd out the real investment is they're pick the winner strategy. Now, again, I hope I'm pleasantly shocked and them deciding which projects get done and which industries they're going to support. But, experience tells us when we get the government trying to pick the winners and the government trying to decide what goes, um, it's not great for private business. That's where all these great ideas die. I would much rather just get out of business's way, get rid of the crazy regulations and the crazy environmental burdens and the crazy tax structure, and say, just get out of business's way and let business do it. I think they're going to be a lot more efficient than trying to pick the winners. But hopefully, hopefully I'm wrong, and they're able to pick a couple winners that really go gangbusters. We haven't seen anything in the oil and gas. So they're talking about, some of these green stuff. They are talking about some LNG, but the oil and gas, we've got so much oil and gas. So I really hope oil and gas is on the short-term horizon for the government, because that can transform the finances and the economy of Canada.
Yeah, I completely agree, and that was a great story to spit to show clarity on how they're putting that plan out there. So now I want to talk a bit about housing, because this is where we really saw the marketing come out, right? We talk about in our podcast, our monthly podcast every month, the different things that have come out over the last couple months, and the fireworks and the big promises that they told us. They're going to supercharge home building. They're going to solve the housing crisis. They're going to put generational investment out there. We're investing in the next generation. And housing is really important for many Canadians, right? This was a hot topic. But when you peel back the glitter, here's what's really in the box. So this is what's actually happening in that budget. 25 billion over 5 years in housing related spending, which sounds pretty good, right? 25 billion, I like it. But let's break it down a bit. They're going to put 8.5 billion for Build Canada homes. Now, if they actually hit their 3.9 million home target, that works out to just a few $1,000s per home if they're going to hit it, right? Then we've got 5 billion for CMHC's apartment construction loans. Now, this program's been around for a bit, and historically, it only moves the needle a little, right? We haven't seen huge leaps and bounds from that one. We've got 1.5 billion for co-ops and affordable projects. and we have 600 million for module and factory built homes. Now, here's where I think there's a tiny nod of optimism with the module homes, because the module funding could actually help, right? If it streamlines the builds and brings costs down, faster factory built units could be a bright spot if the red tape doesn't strangle it before they even start, which typically happens. Now, I know people are probably listening and they're saying that when the government typically gets involved, it's never more efficient than private business. And I hear you and I agree, but I am trying to see a little glimmer in all of this, right? So I think if this can help, I'd love to see it help. Now, with respect to the other investments in housing, the real leverage though isn't in the money; it's in the conditions. So Ottawa's message to the cities is basically, if you want infrastructure money, cut your development charges and speed up your approvals. Now, if municipalities do actually cut development charges, it will absolutely help lower home building costs, right? If they do it. But that's cautiously optimistic that they're going to move forward with it. So it's a bold move, and in theory, if it works, that it can work. But it's risky in practice, right? Because if the municipalities dig their heels in, they don't move forward, they don't play ball, all these big promises just stay on paper. We're not going to see them go anywhere.
Yeah. So, if the city of Toronto, Olivia Chow says, no, we're not going to change the building codes, we're not going to reduce development charges, then, you know, we're not going to see the impact. But I want to stick with housing for a second, because one of the biggest factors, without question, why housing is so expensive was because of the immigration boom. And really, we started, years ago, increasing immigration, and up till 2022, we were still looking at immigrants with skills. So, in other words, we were bringing in the doctors, the lawyers, the people, the tradespeople, the people that had jobs, or people that could get jobs immediately, and they contributed to the economy. Now, did they increase the cost of housing? Yeah, sure. You got more people, but in 2022, the real change was they just opened the floodgates basically to almost anyone, where they said anyone can come in, and they just opened the floodgates, and we've got all these people that have come into Canada now, not all of them necessarily skilled in producing and able to fill those jobs that Canadians weren't able to fill. And since 2022, we've just seen a massive demand, or massive population increase, which drives up the price of housing, right? There's just fewer houses for the amount of people. So one of the things I'll give them some credit for, is they're finally tightening the tap on immigration. Now, again, this is good. They're saying, great, we're gonna reduce immigration. So, like, the Bank of Canada, like, this isn't just me. Like, the Bank of Canada has said population growth has been a huge driver of rent inflation and home demand and home prices. Like, the Bank of Canada says this. This isn't our spin. So the new plan for permanent residents, to drop from 400,000 to 380,000, and then the following year 365,000. So temporary resident admissions in Canada will be cut almost in half by 2027, 28. So, again, good, but it may take up to 10 years to kind of make up for the disastrous immigration policy that we had, where we just opened the floodgates. So it's a step in the right direction. It's got a cool demand over the long term. Definitely, it was overdue. It will come with some economic consequences. The only reason we've really had positive GDP is because of the so many people we brought in. Even though our GDP per capita, in other words, per person, was getting less and less. It was decreasing each year because we were bringing the people in. So we might, have some kind of reduction in our GDP. Maybe there are some more difficulty filling jobs and stuff. But overall, from a housing perspective, it's definitely a step in the right direction. So finally, tackling immigration. We're all for immigration, but we just need to do it at a controlled, justifiable, good for the Canadian people, good for the Canadian economy way, not just open the floodgates.
Yeah, well, and we had listened to that economist just last week, that had talked and dug into this a bit, and it wasn't just the floodgates, but they were really targeting immigration, of students and temporary workers, which doesn't help our housing problem, right? Which was a big thing. So she said that as well, because she had been talking about the budget, that this is a step in the right direction, that they're making some changes to not only lower, but, bring in the right people to, like, not the right people, the students and everything are all good, but bring in the people that are going to be able to push that housing affordability down for us as well. Another big note that we saw, or headline that we saw, was first-time homebuyers GST rebate. So they doubled down on the GST HST rebate on new homes up to 1 million, which sounds great, right? We're going to have double down on that GST. You can save up to 50,000 federally and even more when provinces match it. But when you look at Ottawa's own numbers, they only allocated around 4 billion for the next 5 years. So their modeling implies that it will only help around 20,000 buyers per year. This actual thing. So in a market where there's 500,000 transactions happening annually, 20,000 is kind of a drop in the bucket on who this is going to impact. So it's not going to impact a lot of people, but they made it into quite the large headline when they were talking about it.
Yeah, it's again, the headlines look great, and then you dig into the numbers, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of a lot of the same old, same old. But let's kind of start moving towards wrapping up here because okay, we're saying all this stuff, we're saying a lot of stuff we think's not great news for us, short term or long term. Some glimmers of hope in there, and again, we're trying to give the government the benefit of the doubt that some of these plans work out. But at the end of the day, people are all right. Where does that leave me? So, how does all this affect me? So, I think the three big takeaways for our listeners, business owners, investors, families trying to build real wealth. Number one, borrowing costs are going to stay high. You can't have big deficits without pushing up long term interest rates. It's just the bigger the deficits, the long term interest rates are going to go up. Number two, taxes are going up. Mark my words, taxes are going up. Not today, but eventually. There's no other way to service and pay back the debt, this massive debt mountain, other than increasing taxes. Where does the government get their money? There's no government money. It's all taxpayer money. So this out of control deficit spending, out of control debt, there's got to be a day of reckoning coming for all those people out there with their RRSPs thinking they're tax deductible. They're not. They're tax deferrals, and you're putting that deferral down the road, kicking the can down the road to say, oh, I'm going to pay tax when I take it out in 20, 30, 40 years. Well, I'm telling you right now, taxes will be higher down the road. There's no other way we're going to be able to pay for this massive debt deficit. Third takeaway is housing may stabilize. Now, this might not be short term. It might not lower prices. It might not solve the problem we have for young people not being able to afford homes in the short term. But as we bring those immigration numbers down, and if the municipalities play ball and start reducing development costs, and we spur some of these initiatives to build more homes, I think the housing could at least stabilize and stop going up at the same rate it was. So borrowing costs high, taxes are going up, housing may stabilize, I think would be the real big three takeaways that everyone should be aware of.
Yeah, and those are the takeaways, but what can you do to prepare for this? Well, I think this is really where the infinite banking strategy shines. And we talk about infinite banking a lot on our podcast. But when you think of it, when government stacks debt, brings in the deficits, interest rates become unpredictable, borrowing gets expensive, private investment becomes riskier, taxes creep up, all of these things, what do we need? Well, we need control. We need to have control of our money so we can take advantage of the opportunities, deal with the emergencies when we come up. That's exactly what the infinite banking and using high cash value life insurance is going to be able to do for you. We're going to have control of our money. You're going to have liquidity. So when others are scrambling to, go to those banks and deal with those interest rates, having direct access to your money, no questions asked through those policy loans, very, very important. You need a volatility buffer, so not tied to government policy swings. You want it, smooth, conservative, stable returns that are happening. a tax-free environment, like high cash value life insurance, the most tax efficient thing out there. It grows tax-free. We spend it tax-free. When we die, it's tax-free. When taxes are on the rise, it is absolutely something you need to be thinking about in your planning. That in the big picture, not all of your investments, not all of your savings are in taxable places or taxable buckets, like I like to call them. So you need to be looking at that. So this budget really does reinforce why our clients are relying on their high cash value life insurance, their policies as their foundation of their plan, right? We need that control. We need that foundation, that safe place. And building out that foundation with infinite banking is exactly how you're going to be able to do it.
Yeah, great options to build your wealth. Okay, so to wrap up here, is this a transformative budget? I'd say absolutely. It's transformative in the sense that it transforms the national debt into something your grandchildren will be paying off for their entire lives and longer. Is it better than what we've lived through in the last decade? I don't think so. Debt's still going up, deficits are going up. But I'll tell you the real good news here. We talked about all this stuff, some of it not so great in the future and all that. A lot of that is just noise because 80% of what's going to affect you and your future and then your business's future and your family's financial future is not what the government does, it's what you do. So you can still be incredibly successful in this wonderful country we live in. You can still be wealthy in this incredible country we live in because the majority of what's going to affect you is your behavior, your financial strategies, how you build wealth. So you can still control your wealth, like Christina talked about with cash value life insurance. You can take advantage of opportunities. Yes, it might be a little more challenging with all these government debts and or debt deficits and debts, but the reality is 80% of your future is what you're going to do. So don't get discouraged. I know some young people out there think I'm never going to be able to do this or never be able to buy a home. And I simply don't think that's true. You've just got to focus on what can you control and what can you do. And you can take control of your finances. You can start planning now for a future. So I encourage everyone listening, don't be down by this budget. Use it as a reason to refocus on how am I going to build my wealth because I can control and affect that. And if you want to talk to one of our wealth coaches and say how do I do this? How do I build a future? I'm a business owner. How do I avoid some of these increasing taxes down the road? How do I avoid this RRSP bomb that's going to happen when I take my money out? Reach out to us, book a call with one of our wealth coaches. We're happy to have an education call to let you know how you can look after the 80%. All right. So that's Budget 2025. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching that episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Click that like button, hit that bell button so you never miss an episode. And if you want to learn more about us, go to controlandcompound.com. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning into this episode. The information contained in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and is separate and apart from the wealth coach services provided by Darren Mitchell and Associates, Inc. to its qualified clients. Control and Compound Financial expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, or any other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast or the information in it. The views expressed here are those of each participant and guest and not necessarily those of or endorsed by Control and Compound Financial, its affiliates, subsidiaries, and their respective directors, shareholders, officers, or employees. For full disclosure, visit controlandcompound.com/podcast-media.